We have a Tighten the Knot resource table in the back. It's got some books on it that we're selling for $10. It's cheaper than you can get them on Amazon. We're taking a loss. We just want to get them into your hands. They're books about singleness and dating and sex and marriage. There's also a bunch of free resources back there for you to pick up. And we have a website designed just for this series called tightenthenot.love. I didn't even know .love was a thing before this series, but we have one. And it's got additional resources on it. Links to the messages from this series, to blogs, to helpful articles, and a whole lot more. So please take advantage of that and invest in your relationships. And that's kind of the big idea of what I want to talk about this morning. Over the course of the last few weeks, we've talked about how to understand love from God's perspective. And we've talked about how to fight fair when conflict inevitably happens in marriage. And this morning, I want to talk about how to invest in one another. How to chase the vision of love and marriage that your soul is wired to want. And how to intentionally pursue the unity of this picture of two lives becoming one. Because that's what God tells us actually happens when we get married. Way, way back at the very beginning. In the creation poem in Genesis 2. God says that his intention, his design is that a man would leave his father and mother, be joined together with his wife, and the two would become one flesh. And Adam looks at Eve and he says, she's bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. We're connected. That sounds like a really awesome picture, but it's a dramatically different one than the picture of marriage we get from our culture. Like outside of the occasional romantic comedy or Disney movie that uses happily ever after at the end, we're bombarded with a pretty bleak picture in our world of marriage as an institution. It's why we all know like corny marriage jokes. We've heard them so many times because there are plenty of people all around us who are not having any fun in their marriages, and they're more than happy to tell us about it. We're like, oh, men will never know happiness until they get married, and then it's too late. Ha 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 ha. You know, or what's the difference between love and marriage? Love is blind. Marriage is an eye-opener. Or my favorite one, and I actually heard a pastor use this one at a wedding. He said, you know, here today there are 2 rings, but in marriage there are 3 rings. The engagement ring, the wedding ring, and the suffering. Like, that's a way to nail a wedding sermon right there. Right? But those kind of jokes are common, and they get a chuckle because, unfortunately, they hit a little too close to home for a lot of us. And it's sad, but I think there are a lot of marriages out there with 2 people who had a whole lot of fun while they were dating. And at one point, they were pretty fired up about the idea of spending the rest of their lives together. And then they got married, and life happened. And things got busy, and somewhere along the line, they stopped enjoying each other. And they didn't even mean to. It just kind of happened. And what I want us to see this morning is that God is inviting us not to settle for that. Because we were made, and marriage was made for so much more. And God delights when we enjoy the fullness of what marriage was intended to be and intended to bring to our lives. And so this morning we're going to get some marriage wisdom from a guy the Bible says is the wisest man that ever lived, Solomon. I want to kick things off by reading something that he wrote in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verse 9. And to be fair, before we read this, disclaimer, Solomon was pretty depressed when he wrote this. So take it with a grain of salt. But he says, enjoy life with your wife whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life God has given you under the sun. For this is your reward in life for all your toil. But I actually love this, because what he's saying is, look, there are going to be times when you get up and you go to work and you come home and you feed the kids and then you just rinse and repeat again and again and again, day after day after day. And you're chasing all this stuff that the world says you're supposed to chase, and it feels pretty meaningless. But if you can find somebody along the way to love and invest in and do life with, that can make the grind of life not just tolerable, but fun. Look, life needs fun. Marriages need fun, they do. Without fun and adventure and conversation and intimacy, it's really easy for marriages to become transactional. To take this thing God created to be a picture of his self-giving, unrelenting, unbreakable, unyielding covenant love and turn it into like a business partnership. We got 2 people and then they're living under the same roof, but they're living dramatically different lives that only coalesce around getting tasks accomplished, getting the kids fed, getting the food on the table. Like, you do this, I'll do that, got it, ready, break. And it's crazy because we don't fall in love transactionally. And we don't usually fall in love with people that we don't enjoy. But it's really easy for marriages to slide into that space if we're not intentional. And once we get there, it isn't hard to feel a little bit empty. Like something's missing and start peering over the fence, wondering if the grass is greener on the other side. I feel like, this is dry and it's frustrating. And I feel like I was made for something more than this. Maybe the grass is greener in another person's yard. Well, like, what if I was with her instead? I wish I'd married him instead. Oh man, I'm jealous of all those single people. I wish I was single instead. But the truth is, the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is always greener where you water it, fertilize it, cut it back, and take care of it. So we're going to talk about how to do that today, how to fertilize the grass. I don't want to kill off one of your excuses before we even dive in, because I know some of you are already thinking this, and others of you, as I keep on talking, it's going to pop into your heads. You're going to be like, oh man, that sounds awesome. We just don't have time. Like, oh, I would love to invest in marriage and deepen love and really do some of this stuff, but life is too crazy and too busy right now. But let me be clear. I believe if you don't have some fun in your marriage, eventually you will not have a marriage. I think God's picture that he paints is pretty clear, and it leaves us with only one option. In marriage, you don't have time not to have fun with each other. You don't. I know, life and work get busy. I know that kids eat up a massive chunk of your schedule. They just take a whole huge chunk of your life, and it's easy to get so consumed by that you don't make time to have fun together anymore. But it's crazy because the Bible and modern science are actually in some pretty good alignment on this one. One of the worst things you can do for your kids is to make them such a priority that you don't have time to invest in each other anymore. Like when you put them on a pedestal and it cuts off your relationship with your spouse, you hurt them. It sounds counterintuitive, but when you invest in loving each other well, it helps your kids' sense of security, their sense of stability, their emotional development, and all of their future relationships. Okay, when you prioritize your kids over your spouse, you hurt your kids and yourself and your spouse. When you prioritize your work or your hobbies or your friends, the list goes on and on and on. But everybody loses when you do that. You don't have time not to have fun together. You can't afford not to invest in your relationship. World-renowned marriage expert John Gottman puts it this way: happy marriages are built on deep friendship. So how do we cultivate that? Well, we're going to look at 3 different aspects of chasing connection, of cultivating friendship this morning that are drawn from another book Solomon wrote called Song of Songs. And it's almost right in the middle of the Bible, and it's an interesting book. It's an erotic love poem, just smack dab right in there. And when I was growing up, I thought that maybe God put it in there because he got to the middle and he was like, my book is going to be really long. I was just put some graphic poetry in there, keep people awake, keep them on their toes. Maybe that's why. But I don't think that's why it's in there. I think it's there to remind us that the intimacy of marriage is a small, imperfect picture, a glimpse into the passionate, intimate love that we were created to experience with our Creator. And Song of Songs actually gives us a really cool look at how to pursue intimacy with one another. So if you got a Bible this morning, crack it open near to the middle. Song of Songs chapter 1. If not, you can follow along on the screen. And if you don't own one, please take one from the Next Steps table. Take kids' versions for your kids. They're our gift to you. So the first type of fun married people need to be having together. And consequently, if you're not married or not married yet, you need to guard these 3 things. These 3 things really do create a deep level of intimacy. They drive you forward, and they can be incredible inside marriage, and they can cause a lot of hurt and pain if you misuse them outside marriage. I'm not saying don't do these things, especially this first one. If you don't do this one before you're married, don't get married. But be careful with them. The first thing married couples need to do is chase each other's hearts through talk. You gotta talk to each other. I just saw a bunch of women smile and a bunch of dudes do this. Because it's like, can we talk? Usually means we're in trouble. Like, oh, great, what did I do wrong this time? But women, you got to understand, I'm stereotyping a little bit here, but with some good evidence. Men tend to think about relationships the way you think about your cars. Okay, you don't want to work on them, you just want them to work. And that's how guys think about marriage. But creating space to talk to each other matters. And it's weird how difficult that is in marriage sometimes. Like I remember back in college, I spent crazy amounts of money on phone cards so that I could talk to Jenny for hours. And all you people under 30, just be thankful that you don't even know what that is, because dialing in a 24-digit code on a rotary phone, it's not cool. But now, here we are a couple decades later, and we're living together and everything, and there are still days, it feels like weeks sometimes, where it's like 9 p.m., and finally work and stuff and getting kids to bed, and all the chores around the house got done, and you sit down on the couch, and you're just like, hey, sorry, I should know this. What's your name again? Jenny, yeah, how's life been going for you? It's just easy to get caught up in that cycle. But the picture we get in Song of Songs is one of constant conversation. The whole book is this conversation between him and her and their friends, and they just keep going back and forth. And in chapter 1, Solomon looks at his beloved, and he says, I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses. Now, a quick time out. I know this is in the Bible, but it's Mother's Day, so please, dudes, do not try that one on your woman today. Just don't tell her she looks like a horse. The size, the smells. It's not good, okay? Pharaoh, he had a famous collection of perfect horses. To be Pharaoh's chariot horses, you had to be immaculate and flawless. And so what he's doing here is not telling her, baby, you're a horse face. He's saying, you're perfect, okay? And then he says, your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you earrings of gold studded with silver. And he continues a few verses later, how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes are doves. And she responds, and the whole book is full of them pursuing each other and growing together through the intimacy of conversation, because the truth is you can't get intimacy without conversation. And by conversation, I don't mean the transactional stuff where you look at each other like, hey, can you do this? Can you pick up the kids over there? Can you cook this? Like, that's important. That's how we get through life. We have to have transactional conversations, but this isn't the heart-pursuing, marriage-growing conversations that we're talking about. And I also don't mean the words that the two of you mumble to each other where both of your faces are buried in a smartphone. I mean creating space to get face-to-face and listening to each other's heart. We know the power of that. We know how much words matter and conversations matter. It's why we intuitively weaponize silence. Like there's something about you in elementary school that knows if I'm mad at someone and I don't talk to them, they will feel it. And the silent treatment is a part of a whole lot of marriages. I actually heard a comedian talking about this not that long ago. He brought up The Sixth Sense, the movie, and how like when we all watched that the first time, nobody knew Bruce Willis was dead. It was like one of the greatest shock endings in cinema history. It made M. Night Shyamalan's career as a director. What's crazy about that is instead of considering that he might be dead, everybody just watched that movie for an hour and a half and figured his wife wasn't talking to him for like a year. Like that made more sense to us than the possibility of him being dead. And the crazy thing is he got shot at the beginning of the movie. They couldn't have been more clear that this guy's dead. And we all watched it and we're like, yeah, I know what that guy's going through. That's marriage. Even when you get shot, it's your fault. But like, we get it. Words matter. And lack of words matter. We know they're powerful and they're meaningful and they're necessary in relationships. And we got to get this too. Like at the foundation of marriage is this fundamental human need. It's this thing God placed inside all of our souls. I want to be clear. You don't have to be married to have this need met. Not at all. You can have it met single. All you need is God. But the primary motivator that causes us to seek relationships is this need inside of us. This passionate desire to be fully known and fully loved anyway. And to be loved without being known is nice, but it's superficial. To be known and then not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and fully loved anyway, that's what we're built for. That's what we find with God. And that's what God built marriage to be, like a space where you're known and loved anyway. And so we got to make space. We got to make time in our schedules to get face to face. Because you cannot fully know somebody without talking to them. And you can't fully love somebody unless you fully know them. The second type of fun married people need to be having. You got to chase each other's hearts through time. You got to spend some time not just face-to-face talking, but side by side having fun together. In Song of Songs, chapter 7, verse 11, she looks at him and she says, "Come, my beloved, let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages. Let us go early to the vineyards to see if the vines have budded, if their blossoms have opened." She's like, hey, let's vacation and visit some small towns and look at flowers. Sounds like an awful time, right? But sometimes you just go where your wife wants to go and you hold her hand Because if you let go of it, she'll go shopping, and that's even worse. That was mean, I'm sorry. But like throughout this book, they just go do stuff together. If marriages are built on friendships, then you gotta hang out because friends hang out. That's just part of it. And I think too many couples out there used to be really awesome at hanging out when they were dating, and then they got married and life got busy, and they just somewhere along the way decided they didn't have space to make that a priority anymore. Which is crazy to me, because when it comes to your work, like the really important stuff, the tasks that if they don't get done, you'll lose your job, those get priority placement on your calendar. But when it comes to marriage, like the really good stuff, the stuff that if that doesn't get done, you might lose your marriage, really frequently gets pushed to the periphery of our schedules by the tyranny of the urgent. Like, yeah, I know it's important and I want to do that, but it's going to have to wait and wait. And wait, we'll do it later. Someday we're going to make that a priority. Someday we'll talk. Someday we'll hang out. Someday we'll go on a date. Someday we'll go on a vacation together. Like someday, just like that in this season, like in the next life stage when everything really slows down. If you've been telling yourself that or telling each other that, I want you today to find someone in this room who is one life stage ahead of you and ask them, does life really slow down? We got to stop pushing this off to someday. Okay? Creedence Clearwater Revival said it best. I'm here to tell you now, each and every mother's son, you better learn it fast and you better learn it young. Someday never comes. I don't know, some of you are thinking right now, man, it sounds great, but I don't even know what we do. We used to hang out, but now things have changed so much. We don't have any common interests anymore. I feel like there's no hope for us to do this side-by-side time thing. And you know what? If that's you, you're not alone. You're not. For every single one of us, the person you're married to now is at least a little bit different than the person you thought you were marrying. Because time changes things and people grow and they're not the same as they used to be. Through the years, there are seasons where you got to learn to love a person you didn't marry because the person you did marry changed. The theologian Stanley Hauerwas puts it this way. The primary problem in many marriages is learning to love and care for the stranger you find yourself married to. So if you're in that boat, good news. It doesn't mean your marriage is dysfunctional. It just means it's a marriage. And for me, okay, I've known Jenny. We've been together for over half our lives. We are not the same people we were half a lifetime ago in high school. Like things have changed, times and seasons and life stage, and I did not know that then. I didn't understand it, but I do now, and I'll be real with you. And every married father in this room knows exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Wife Jenny murdered girlfriend Jenny at the altar. I saw it happen. Mom Jenny murdered wife Jenny in the delivery room. I saw that happen too. I took less pictures. That part was gross. But like, I saw it happen. This is my life. It's different, but it's a good thing. Because you guys, if I had to choose between like 16-year-old Jenny, who I fell in love with and who I had a lot of fun with, if I had to choose between 16-year-old Jenny and 29-year-old Jenny to be raising my kids and to be doing life with old bald Mike, I would pick whatever age Jenny is now, Jenny, any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I know people change, and it's a struggle sometimes to find things to do together, but it's a fight worth fighting. And part of the beauty of marriage, which again, it was designed by God to be like this visual for us of his incredible, unbreakable, unyielding covenant love. Part of the beauty of it is that the vow you make on your wedding day is not just a declaration of present love, it's a promise of future love. And to love well through the years, you got to be fierce about creating time and space to hang out together and have a little bit of fun. I don't care what it is. Whether it's bowling or board games, golf or glamping. I don't do camping. I don't believe in it, but like whatever it is for you, hiking, cooking, playing sports, watching sports, shopping, video games, like figure out what your thing is and make it a priority. And I know some of you are feeling like, you know what? I don't feel like there's anything that we could pick that we both want to do. That is not a problem at all. I've said for the last 2 weeks, love is not about your feelings. Love is a lifestyle of self-sacrifice. So if there's nothing you feel like you can do together, you have an awesome opportunity to self-sacrifice and show love and go do what the other person wants to do. Just do it. You can't fully know each other and fully love each other without investing time in your relationship, without making some time to go have fun together. The third type of fun married people need to be having is this, and it's found all throughout Song of Songs. You got to chase each other's hearts through touch. And there's a type of touch God says he invented exclusively for marriage, and it's a critically important part of intimacy, of making marriage fun and fulfilling, and everything God says it's designed to be. I don't know, some of you are sitting here thinking, we got to talk about sex on Mother's Day? We'd rather sit here with our buttoned-up, Midwestern, oppressed, evangelical conscience and pretend like none of us have any idea how mothers became mothers. Seems like a good day to talk about it. It didn't happen because a stork delivered a baby to your doorstep, right? Motherhood starts the same way Song of Songs starts. She says, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers." Cue the Marvin Gaye. Dun, 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 dun. Right? But check it out. We're not talking about sex right now because of the biological connection to Mother's Day. And we're not talking about it to be edgy or relevant to culture. Some churches like that idea, if we get real graphic, people forget that. This way of pursuing each other's hearts through physical intimacy is profoundly theological. See, God created marriage to be a covenant, an unbreakable promise. And all throughout the Old Testament, in fact, in the whole ancient world, every single covenant that was made had a covenant symbol. There was either a picture or a ritual that existed for two reasons. One, to remind everybody that that covenant was in place. And two, to connect everybody personally to what that covenant meant for them on an emotional and a spiritual level. So in the Old Testament, the Jews celebrated Passover every year because God said, look, I want you to renew and remember these covenants again and again and again. And Passover was this remembering of God's covenant faithfulness to the nation of Israel. They called it his chesed. And every year they celebrated Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, as a remembrance of God's covenant to forgive. And then Jesus came along. And he got around a table at the Last Supper with his disciples. And he broke bread with them and said, hey, my body broken for you. And then he drank a cup with them and said, this is my blood poured out. This is the covenant symbol of the new covenant, that my death and resurrection accomplished your reconciliation. He told them, do this every time. Do this constantly. Do this repeatedly. Do this regularly. So that you can remember this covenant that I made with you and you can connect to everything it means for you on a personal, emotional, and spiritual level. Sex is the covenant symbol for marriage. God tells us that's what it is. That's what it's created for. That's what it's all about. It's a unique invention by the Creator where two people connect so intimately and so fully that they're saying, I belong completely, permanently, and exclusively to you. And just like communion, God invites us, do this regularly. Keep doing this as a reminder of the covenant that's in place and as a powerful way to experience everything that it means for you on a physical level, but on an emotional and a spiritual level as well. He says, look, I made this thing as a way of connecting you more deeply and intimately than you could be connected any other way. It's giving you a picture of what it looks like to be fully known and fully loved. And I actually made it so that new human life only comes out of that connection of love and intimacy. And also, I made it fun. You're welcome. I did that on purpose. You're welcome, humans. You're wired to find joy and intimacy. So crank on the Marvin Gaye and get it on. In Proverbs 5:18 and 19, Solomon writes this, may your fountain be blessed. May you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer. May her breasts satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. And that word intoxicated there in Hebrew is this word shaga. It's the word for an animal attacking another animal and killing it and eating it, which is a weird description for marriage. I don't know. But I think what he's getting at here is be consumed. Like this animal, it chases it down, it hunts it down, it won't give up, and it consumes it completely. Saying like, be that passionate, be that consumed, be all in, be intoxicated with love, full of joy, fully satisfied. That's what sex is all about, and that's why we got to talk about it in church. Because we got a generation that's being sold on a different picture, that it's just physical, that it's just for fun. You can give it away and take it, and there's no consequences and no repercussions. And the message they get from a church that's scared to talk about it or treats it like it's taboo is that we either shouldn't talk about it or it's only for procreation or something. The world is telling them a better story. I mean, it's no wonder that we have a generation that's cohabitating before marriage, even though they know it spikes divorce rates. A generation that's addicted to pornography. A generation that's treating sex cavalierly. Of course they are. The world is selling them a better story than the church. And that story's a lie. We know the results of it. The data is in. Like pornography and sex addiction are reaching unreal levels. Depression is skyrocketing. Nearly half of kids live in a home without both parents. 1 in 10 live in a home with neither. Diseases are prevalent. We live in a world where people report feeling lonelier and less loved than ever. Divorce is an epidemic. These are the results of the lie that culture is selling, but it's telling a better story. And here's the truth. God wrote a better story. He wrote a better story than the one our culture is telling. We have a better story. We need to tell that story. And married people, we have an obligation to a broken world that's full of hurt and pain, and to the next generation to live out and model that better story with our lives and our marriages. Sex inside marriage is about two people becoming one, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. It's about experiencing the greatest picture we can get on this earth of the passionate, unyielding, full intimacy that God created us for. That's what it's all about. And so you got to make space in your lives and your calendars to chase each other's hearts with touch. Your marriage has to have it to flourish. You can't go radio silent on talk or touch or time. Talk, time, and touch. Get it on your calendar. Make it a priority. Stop treating it like it's important but not urgent. It's urgent. You don't have time not to have fun together. It'll cost you. It'll cost your kids. It'll cost the people around you. It'll cost everybody if you don't make this a priority. So invest in it. I'll be honest. I know that some of you are thinking right now, look, I get this on an intellectual level. I understand that it's important. I understand that that's what God made it for and how to make a marriage flourish. But I don't want to. He's a jerk, and I don't want to. She's cold and she's selfish, and I don't want to. It's difficult. That sounds hard. I don't want to. And I get that. Like there are always going to be issues when sinners say I do, and sometimes talk and time and touch are just not what you're feeling. You're not. But I want you to understand this morning, like that's real, and it's okay to think that. But feelings follow actions. They do. This is an interesting phenomenon in human life. Feelings follow actions. Nobody starts eating healthy because they see a bowl of quinoa and think I feel like that'll be better than pizza. That's not how it starts. Feelings follow actions. You want to feel how you used to feel about each other, you got to do what you used to do. Or even better than that, if you want to feel differently about each other than you feel right now, even if your marriage is healthy and things are going great, but you want to fall more in love than you are right now, if you want to feel differently and grow the relationship, then you got to do something different than what you're doing right now. That's where it starts. It'll never happen if you just wait around for your feelings to catch up. It'll never happen if you have to feel it first. And it'll never happen too if you decide like, I don't want to be vulnerable like that, so I'm going to try and like take love from that person so I feel secure enough to give it. You can't take love. It's an interesting thing. You can give it and you can receive it, but you can't take it. And so give it because you're built for that, for the unconditional, unquenchable love of God. And when marriage flourishes, when marriage is awesome, when marriage is fun, it's because that's what you're chasing through talk and time and touch. And if we don't do it, we miss out. We do. We keep on living believing that maybe the grass is greener on the other side when the truth is it's not. It's just greener wherever we take care of it. And if we care for it, Like, we not only have the opportunity to tell a better story to our world and to the next generation, but we have the opportunity every single day of our lives to live a better story. Solomon was right in Ecclesiastes. If you find someone to do life with, it makes the grind not just tolerable, but fun. So let's do it today. And some of you are thinking, okay, I would like to, but how? I want to resource you. In the back, at the Tie the Knot resources table, we have these. This is 20 cards. It's got a date idea on one side, and it's got a conversation idea on the other side. This is 20 ways to get started with talk and time. And the third one, if you're not married, don't worry about it. If you are married, you come up with your own ideas. I'm not going to blame for any of that. But we're going to get you started on the first two, talk and time. Today, if you are married, if you think you might want to be married, if you know somebody who's married, grab one of these on your way out, and let's start with this. Someday never comes. It's not coming, so let's start today. Will you guys pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for your love. Thank you just for the intimacy and the passion with which you love us. And thank you for relationships. Thank you that we're built to relate not just to you, but to one another as well. And I pray today that we wouldn't get caught up in the pattern and the flow of a culture that's so self-focused, it doesn't make time for the other. Would you just do a thing in our marriages? Would you help us live toward this greater vision you have of investing in one another? With our talk and with our time and with our touch, and just having fun, so that the world can see through us and in us a better story and a better picture of how deep and how wide and how incredible your love really is. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.